Hello and welcome back. The British Broadcasting Corporation, the BBC, long regarded as a pillar of journalistic integrity and cultural influence. It has shaped public discourse for over a century, yet behind its facade the organisation has faced troubling revelations about individuals within its ranks who committed serious crimes, some of whom use their positions to conceal or even facilitate their misconduct. From high-profile scandals involving SA to financial fraud and corruption, these cases have sparked national outrage and raised urgent questions about institutional accountability, vetting procedures and the culture of silence that can pervade powerful institutions like the BBC. In this video we look at those individuals and their cases, but I think it's important that we first start off with the arrests from Operation Yewtree. Operation Yewtree was launched in October 2012 by the Metropolitan Police in response to shocking revelations about widespread SA committed by former BBC presenter Jimmy Saville. Saville died in 2011 and many victims felt safer coming forward only after his death. The scale of accusations was staggering. Over 400 people eventually made reports. In many of these reports, it occurred on BBC locations or were facilitated through Saville's work with the broadcaster. It was launched in partnership with the NSPCC and focused on 3 strands: allegations against Saville, allegations against others linked to Saville, and allegations against unrelated individuals. In January 2013, the report giving victims a voice was published, confirming Saville as a prolific sex offender. It detailed over 200 criminal offences. It reported that outside of BBC locations it also occurred in hospitals. Between 2013 and 2015, the operation expanded to investigate other public figures. By October 2015, 19 people had been arrested and 7 were convicted. The 3 individuals who were arrested are not linked mainly to the BBC we are going to go through now. The first we look at is Gary Glitter. Gary Glitter had already got a long criminal record before Operation Yewtree. He was born Paul Francis Gadd on the 8th of May 1944. He is a former British glam rock singer who rose to fame in the 1970s and 1980s. Following Operation Yewtree, he was charged with 6 counts of indecent assault, 1 count of unlawful intercourse with a girl under 13, 1 count of administering a drug or substance to facilitate intercourse. These charges stemmed from incidents committed against 2 individuals between January 1977 and December 1988. He was convicted in 2015 and sentenced to 16 years. He was released but put back in prison for breaching his bail conditions. Now we look at Max Clifford, who was known to many celebrities as he was a British publicist who promoted kiss and tell stories in tabloid newspapers. After Operation Yewtree, he was charged with 8 counts of indecent assault. The victims were girls and young women aged between 15 to 19. These assaults included groping, coercion, and sexual acts. Many of these situations occurred under the guise of offering career opportunities in media or entertainment. He was convicted in 2014 and sentenced to 8 years. The next is someone who was associated with Jimmy Saville, Teret. He was an English radio disc jockey. He actually worked as Saville's chauffeur and assistant. He was charged with 7 counts of 11 counts of indecent assault. His victims were girls aged between 12 and 15. The offences occurred during the 1960s and 1970s. He was cleared of aiding and abetting Jimmy Saville to R a 15-year-old girl, but was found guilty of R-ing her himself. He was sentenced to 25 years and died in 2021. Now let's look at those charged in Operation Yewtree that did work for the BBC. Stuart Hall's conviction was one of the earliest under the operation and shocked the public due to his long-standing association with family-friendly programming. His case highlighted how fame and institutional trust could be exploited to conceal abuse. He joined the BBC in 1959 as a reporter and sports journalist. He became a household name as a presenter of It's a Knockout. He worked on regional BBC news programmes like Look North and North West Tonight. He was known for his eccentric broadcasting style and football commentary. He was arrested in December 2012. His initial charges were 3 counts of indecent assault. He eventually faced 15 counts of indecent assault and 1 count of R. In April 2013, he pleaded guilty to 14 counts of indecent assault involving girls aged 9 to 17, committed between 1967 and 1985. In June 2013, he was sentenced to 15 months in prison. In July 2013, his sentence increased to 30 months after appeal. He had a further trial in 2014 and faced additional charges. He was cleared of R and most indecent assault charges. He was convicted of 1 further indecent assault. In total, he served 5 years in prison. A well-known Australian was also arrested. Rolf Harris began his career on UK television in 1953 on the BBC. He hosted popular shows like The Rolf Harris Show, Rolf's Cartoon Club and Animal Hospital. He was known for his quirky style and catchphrases, often blending music, art and humour. He played unique instruments like the didgeridoo and invented the wobble board. He painted an official portrait of Queen Elizabeth II in 2005. The honours that he received that were later revoked included an OBE in 1977 and a CBE in 2006. He received the Order of Australia in 1989. He was arrested in 2013 under Operation Yewtree. He was convicted in 2014 of 12 counts of indecent assault on 4 girls aged between 8 and 19. He was sentenced to 5 years and 9 months in prison. He was released on licence in 2017. Fred Talbot did appear on the BBC, but he was known mainly for his work with ITV. He's best known for presenting the weather on This Morning from a floating map at Liverpool's Albert Dock. When he did appear on the BBC, it was for educational and science programmes. He was initially convicted in 2015 and found guilty of indecent assaults on boys while working as a biology teacher in the 1970s and 1980s. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison. In 2017, he received additional convictions. He was convicted of 7 counts of indecent assault during camping and boating trips in Scotland. These offences occurred in the 1970s and 1980s, and he was sentenced to an additional 4 years in prison. Victims were teenage boys under his care during school excursions. The assaults took place while Talbot was a teacher at a grammar school for boys. He used his position to target vulnerable students, often isolating them during trips. Evidence included testimony from former pupils, including Ian Brown of the Stone Roses, who is not a victim but confirmed accounts from other pupils. His total prison term was 9 years and 8 months. He was later released on licence. But now we look at those charged outside of Operation Yewtree, and first we start with the most recent, Huw Edwards. Huw Edwards was a Welsh journalist and former BBC News presenter. He presented the BBC 10 o'clock news from 2003 to 2023. Edwards was one of the most recognisable faces in British broadcasting, known for presenting major national and international events. He led BBC coverage of historic moments like the death and funeral of Queen Elizabeth II and the coronation of King Charles III. It was in 2020 that his criminal activity began. Between December 2020 and August 2021, Edward engaged in WhatsApp chats with convicted Alex Williams, who sent him 377 images and videos, including 41 indecent images of minors. Some were classified as Category A, the most severe. In February 2021, Williams asked him if the images are too young. Edwards replies that he doesn't want illegal images. In May 2023, a family contacts the BBC, saying a presenter paid their child for explicit photos. On the 6th of July 2023, the BBC receives new allegations of a different nature. By the 7th of July, The Sun published a front-page story about an unnamed BBC presenter accused of paying a teenager for explicit photos. On the 12th of July, Edwards' wife publicly names him and says he is receiving inpatient mental health care. Edwards was hospitalised with depression following the initial allegations. In November, Edwards was arrested by the Metropolitan Police, and on the 22nd of April 2024, he resigned from the BBC on medical advice. On the 26th of June, he was charged with 3 counts of making indecent images of children. He pled guilty on the 29th of July in court. The BBC stated he had betrayed not just the BBC, but audiences who had put their trust in him. He pled guilty to the 3 counts of making indecent images of children which he received during online chats. He was sentenced to 6 months in prison and suspended for 2 years. He was placed on the sex offenders register for 7 years. The court heard he paid up to $1,500 to a convicted paedophile who sent him the images. Despite this, the judge noted his remorse and mental health concerns as mitigating factors. After Huw Edwards was suspended, he was still paid by the BBC. The BBC Director General said that he has not given up on the pursuit of £200,000 paid to Huw Edwards after his arrest last year. The corporation may have to become more muscular and stop paying staff if they are suspended. Another individual that was charged in 2024 is Daniel Frogson. He is a British actor born on the 20th of August 2002. He gained recognition for roles in His Dark Materials on the BBC and Joe All Alone on CBBC. He was nominated for a BAFTA for Best Young Performer. His career took a very dark turn in 2024 when he was convicted of possessing indecent images of children. He downloaded 848 images, including 165 of Category A. The images involved children as young as 3 years old. He began viewing such material at age 17. In February 2024, he was sentenced to 8 months in prison, suspended for 24 months, 43 days sex offender rehabilitation program and 15 additional rehabilitation sessions. He would spend 10 years on the sex offender register and have a 5-year sexual harm prevention order. The judge described the images as sickening and rejecting Frogson's claim that he had no sexual interest in children. Now on to September 2021. Duncan Bartlett was a former BBC journalist who worked at the BBC for 14 years, including as a Tokyo correspondent on the World Business Report. In September 2021, after intelligence linked him to indecent images of minors, he was arrested. The offences occurred between 2016 and 2021. He paid individuals in the Philippines to livestream these children. The victims were aged between 9 and 16. Some victims were identified and safeguarded. They found nearly 6,000 indecent images on his devices. He pleaded guilty to 35 offences, 11 counts of causing a girl under 13 to engage in activity, 9 counts involving girls aged between 13 and 15, 10 counts of paying for services, 3 counts of making images, 2 counts of encouraging criminal offence. He was given 8 years in prison, a 15-year sexual harm prevention order, and to be on the sex offender register for life. His case was described as utterly abhorrent by investigators, and it involved international cooperation to protect the victims. Sizzling Steve, real name Stephen Kish, was a presenter on the CBBC children's show Officially Amazing, which aired from 2013 to 2018. The show featured people from around the world attempting to break Guinness World Records and was popular to younger audiences for its quirky and energetic style. Someone once seen as a cheerful figure in children's television, but this changed in 2021. He pleaded guilty to possessing extreme animal images and videos. The court found 6 grossly offensive images on his devices, leading to a suspended prison sentence and a 5-year ban from having contact with dogs. He had also been running a dog walking business called Tales of Love Pet Care at the time. For this case, we look at a British actor, writer and comedian Chris Langham, who was born on the 14th of April 1949. He gained prominence for his roles in several acclaimed British television series, some by the BBC. The Thick of It, which earned him a BAFTA, People Like Us, Not the 9 O'Clock News and Help. Langham's career was severely impacted by a criminal conviction in 2007. He was found guilty of 15 counts of downloading and possessing images and videos. He served just 6 months in prison and was placed on the offenders register with a 10-year ban from working with children. Despite the conviction, Langham has expressed a desire to contribute positively to society, including working on a documentary project in Sierra Leone involving former child soldiers and Ebola victims. This case is of a British-born Australian, Adam Britton. He was a renowned crocodile expert based in Darwin. He worked with the BBC and National Geographic. He hosted Sir David Attenborough during filming of Life in Cold Blood. He held a PhD in zoology and was a senior researcher at Charles Darwin University. He was considered a passionate advocate for wildlife conservation, but in 2023 he pleaded guilty to 56 charges. These included animal cruelty, SA of 42 dogs, 39 of which died, possession and distribution of images involving minors. He sourced dogs from Gumtree, Australia, often deceiving owners into believing he was rehoming them. Instead, he filmed himself committing his crimes in a shipping container on his property. Court documents revealed he had a sadistic interest in animals dating back to childhood. He was sentenced to 10 years and 5 months in prison, with parole in 2028. He is banned for life from owning mammals. The judge said it was grotesque and entirely outside any ordinary human conception. Peter Rowell was a radio host and television presenter who worked in the west of England mainly. He was born on the 10th of May 1958. He presented for BBC Radio Newcastle, GWR-FM and BBC Radio Bristol. He appeared in the BBC school drama Geordie Racer in 1988. He also worked as a newsreader and featured reporter for HTV West, now ITV West Country. In 2012, he was sentenced to 6 years in prison after pleading guilty to 12 counts of indecent assault on girls aged between 13 and 15, 6 counts of making indecent images, and 1 count of possessing indecent images. The assaults occurred during the late 1980s and early 1990s while he was working at the GWR-FM. He groomed the victims by inviting them to the studio for a tour and later assaulted them in his car or at their homes. Police also found 795 indecent images, including a video of a 5-year-old girl. He disappeared briefly before his arrest in 2011, which prompted a nationwide search. He has since been released. He now goes by the name Henry Peters and runs an online publication. Now we look at another British radio presenter who was one of the original DJs on BBC Radio 1 when it launched in 1967. His name is Chris Denning. He worked with Radio Luxembourg, Radio London and the BBC Light programme. He helped develop the careers of pop acts like the Bay City Rollers and someone we previously mentioned, Gary Glitter. Denning's criminal record is deeply disturbing. He was first convicted in 1974 for gross indecency and indecent assault. He served prison sentences in the UK and Slovakia for child offences. In 2014, he was sentenced to 13 years for SAing 24 boys aged 9 to 16. In 2016, he received another 13-year sentence for SAing 11 more boys, some as young as 8. He was linked to the Walton Hop Disco, a known hotspot for child grooming, alongside other convicted offenders like Jonathan King and Tam Patton. Denning used his fame to groom victims, sometimes taking them to the Top of the Pops recordings and introducing them to celebrities like one we have also previously mentioned, Jimmy Saville, with some of the essay even occurring at Saville's home. He died in June 2022 at the age of 81 while serving his sentence at Bedford Prison. His cause of death was a bone infection caused by diabetes. Now we look at a former BBC Wales presenter, a man who then went on to find religion and become a church pastor, Ben Thomas. He worked on Wales Today and a Welsh language news programme for young people. He left the BBC in 2005 to become a street preacher in London. He returned to Wales in 2008 as a pastor. In 2020, Thomas was sentenced to 10 years and 4 months in prison, with an additional 6 years on extended licence. His offences included indecent assault, essay with a child, voyeurism and making images. His youngest victim was 11 years old. Many were assaulted while they slept. The crimes occurred in North Wales, Shropshire, London and Romania. Thomas used his role as a church leader to gain access to the victims, often at Christian camps or church events. Judge Timothy Petts described him as a prolific abuser who hid a dark secret while maintaining a public image of earnest faith. Many individuals were unaware that they were victims until much later. We have just been through many cases of criminals that have a link to the BBC, and the BBC has faced intense scrutiny over how it handled cases involving employees. The Jimmy Saville scandal in 2012 revealed failures, with allegations that the BBC staff ignored or suppressed reports of abuse for decades. A Newsnight investigation into Saville was dropped to avoid clashing with tribute programming, sparking public outrage. Former BBC executives acknowledged a culture of casual sexism and celebrity privilege that enabled abuse. Despite calls for an internal inquiry, the BBC often distanced itself from convicted individuals, stating offences were not related to the BBC. In the most recent case of Huw Edwards, the BBC admitted it knew of his arrest for serious offences months before his resignation, yet continued to pay him nearly £480,000 for the year. The broadcaster cited concerns about Edwards' mental health as a reason for not acting sooner, but faced backlash for lack of transparency. While the corporation has taken steps to improve safeguarding and reporting mechanisms, critics argue that deep-rooted cultural issues and a reluctance to confront misconduct among high-profile figures have undermined trust. The BBC continues to face pressure to reform its internal oversight and ensure that safeguarding is not compromised by celebrity status or institutional reputation. If changes have been made, it will remain to be seen. And that concludes our video today. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time.